On this episode of Scots Abroad, we speak to an energetic box-to-box midfielder with an eye for goal. From the youth team of Dundee to the first team to Rangers, then Cardiff. Scottish Cup finals, FA Cup finals and playoff finals. Then his Scotland career and then moving to Australia and life outside of football. This is Scots Abroad with me, John Walker, and this episode's guest, Gavin Ray. Hi Gavin, thanks very much for doing this, really appreciate you. How's life out in Australia?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's flown by. I've been here nearly 6 years already. It's crazy.
Yeah, I've just been keeping up with a bit of career. So you were at a semi-pro club where you joined to play. You then became assistant manager, and now you are the manager of that team.
Well, I was the manager of that. So the team you're talking about is a club called Hakoah Sydney City East. I actually left there in August last year, and now moved to a different club called Rydalmere. Similar sort of idea, semi-pro. But yeah, no, I've been still involved in football and loving it.
Is that in the same division?
It's actually in one division below the one I was in. I'd been at the club previously, Hakoah, for since I came out, so for about 5 years. And then so we'd done really well the first few years when I was there in terms of pushing up the leagues. We got to the top division. We won a cup, which was huge for us as a club because we had a small budget, and it'd been years since we've done it. So it was really positive stuff. And then last year was a little bit more difficult. It was up against it with a small budget and didn't really have a really good season. Ended up getting relegated. And then at the end of that season, both the club and I just thought, you know what, it's probably time just for a fresh break, which was fine. And it's good experience. And, now moved on to a different club.
So I would like just to start with growing up. You grew up in Aberdeen, not far from Pittodrie. Naturally, growing up 77 born in the 80s, title success, Euro success. You were an Aberdeen fan, yes?
I was, yes. Yeah, no, definitely, yeah.
Was that family influence?
Yeah, so I used to go, I wouldn't say my family are proper diehard, football fans or Aberdeen fans. All the family, my dad used to take me down to Pittodrie to watch the games, and it just grew from there. It was something he and I, both shared and enjoyed going to football after my football playing as a kid, and then going down to watch Aberdeen. And like you say, at that time they were phenomenal. So I was pretty blessed with watching a team that were that good, and just thinking it was sort of normal. But yeah, no, looking back, it was a great time to go along and watch these games because they've done very well in the 80s for sure.
And what age was that you started going to the games?
I'd probably started going about when I was 6 or 7. So I would have been 6 when they beat Real Madrid in the Cup Winners' Cup. And I can remember getting a day off school. I think everyone that being got a day off school to go down and celebrate at Pittodrie, I was thinking, this is amazing. So it just sort of grew from there. And yeah, I used to go with my dad every week when we could, albeit around my sort of football schedule. So yeah, it went from when I was pretty young.
And so how long after becoming aware of football, going to the games with your dad, did you start actually playing football?
I'd always been sort of playing football. So my dad was a sportsman that played loads of different sports. He ended up playing cricket as well and played a bit of football. My granddad played football. But for me, it was always football and football only. Whether that was just the time when I was growing up, that's sort of what everyone done. And yeah, I'd been playing football from a young age and quickly became, really obsessed with it and, enjoyed, obviously, the weekends for games and training and stuff.
Something I always like to ask our guests. So you were a centre midfielder in your career. Was there any positions that you wanted to play when you were growing up or when you were younger? And why did centre mid become the one you held down?
Yeah, no, good question. I actually started a lot in defence. I was quite big for my age. I grew pretty quickly. I was always quite one of the bigger ones to start with. I actually played centre-half for a while. I played full-back for a while. I think the reason... I never really looked at wanting to be a striker. I never really looked at thinking, I just need to get all the goals and get all the glory. I've never felt like that. I suppose it depends on your sort of makeup and your characteristics. But I ended up playing centre mid, for pretty much my whole career. And I think that's just down to the fact that I could defend because I started as a defender, so I knew the defending side of it. And then... I like to get forward. I had the energy to get forward as well and the engine to get forward. I always liked scoring goals, even from midfield as a young kid growing up, and even from fullback, getting forward and trying to get goals. So I think central midfield, it just became like a sort of natural position for me to be involved in the game as much as I could all the time with that high energy, and that's why I ended up in centre mid.
I think that's quite interesting. I've been watching as much footage of yourself as I can over the last couple of days, and a lot of the goals you scored from midfield are first-time finishes, perfectly timed runs. Do you actually think maybe playing centre half or right back, moving into centre mid, being able to see the game for most of your youth career was maybe helping you in anticipating how you arrived and when you arrived on deep runs?
Yeah, possibly. That was something I used to love doing, and certainly in this earlier stages and early to mid part of my career, I was box to box midfielder. Like, that's what I wanted to be sort of known as, someone that could do the defensive side, but someone that could go in and get a goal. And there was a couple of players at Dundee when I was coming through that were really good at timing their runs into the box, like late runs into the box and getting finishes, whether it's a first-time finish on the head or first-time shot. And I sort of moulded myself around what they were doing, and they were good in terms of the coaching parts that they would tell me. So I absolutely loved that. I had a passion for doing that, arriving late and getting the goals. The one thing I had when I was, in that early and mid part of my career, a better engine than most players. So like when players are getting tired, I could sense it, and I could say, like, if I get a chance to go again, they're not going to be able to live with me, so I could just go bang straight and keep going, just keep going and keep going. And I wasn't bothered about getting in the box 10 times and not getting the ball, because I knew at one point I'm going to get it, but I just kept going because I had the energy and I was comfortable with the athletic side of it. So I was just like, I'm just going to keep going and keep going. And I know for my opponent that I'm going to be annoying them by doing it, and I'm just going to keep doing it, just getting in that box, and then go from there. So I actually loved that part of the game, and I think I scored a few in my career. I should have scored a lot more, but that was certainly something I really enjoyed.
Yeah, was there any players growing up? I'm thinking of Paul Mason, Jim Bett, Ian Jess a bit later. But was there any players that you watched and decided that was the way you were going to be?
And I can't remember thinking like at that age, just thinking, that's the type of player I want to be. I think it more came with my understanding of the game as I got older and my attributes and what I could do to separate myself from other players, to push myself on in my career. And that was certainly something that I knew I had in my locker, that I could just keep going and get in the box and nick a goal here and there. And I knew that I would be able to separate myself from other midfielders who may be fantastic midfielders but aren't able to get a goal, don't have the athleticism to get in the box and get back and defend like what I did and get goals. So I just played to my strength, and I think that's something you've got to always remain mindful of. What is your strengths, and play to your strengths. It's playing to the basics, I suppose, is the easiest coaching thing to say, but yeah, it's hard to sometimes do.
Yeah, so you went kind of from playing locally, playing for Brecon Youth and the Youth Cup. How do you go from playing at that level to then being offered a YTS with Dundee?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I grew up in a peer group who, had signed for Rangers, Dundee United, Celtic, Man U, Chelsea, Leeds. There was players in my peer group who'd signed for a lot of good, solid teams on S form, and I never got offered an S form. And then I started playing for Brecon in the Youth Cup. We've done well. We actually got to the quarter-final of the Youth Cup, which is huge for Brecon. And then, so I was getting a little bit of, notice taken because of that. And then I was doing well in my juvenile football, and it was going well at the juniors up in Aberdeen. And then Jim Duffy, there was a Dundee scout in Aberdeen, and he says, there's two boys in Aberdeen, I think you should come and watch. And that was to Jim Duffy, the manager at Dundee at the time. So you actually, it's unheard of a first-team manager coming to watch two possible S-form signings or possible YTS signings. But the scout kept saying, listen, you've got to come and watch these two. And luckily, we were playing in a cup final against each other. So it was myself and Jerry O'Driscoll, who we both signed. So we're playing against each other in a cup final towards the end of the season. And luckily, Duffy could make it because of his schedule. So he came up to the game. We both played really well. And then he basically just says, listen, we'd love to have you as part of the YTS group. And we both signed and never looked back, basically.
So do you have to move to Diggs there? And then what kind of impact is that on you as a 15-year-old?
Yeah, huge, to be honest. I mean, It's crazy now that I live sort of in Sydney, the other side of the world, from my family, when in that first early stages, I was homesick going to Dundee, which is like an hour down the road. It's just because I'd never been out of the road. I'd never been out of the house. I'd well looked after from my folks in that sort of cocoon in the bubble. And then it was out of that into the real world. And we were in digs with boys from Glasgow, Edinburgh, a couple of boys from Aberdeen. We were all in the digs, but it wasn't digs where we had like people looking after us constantly. It was a lady from the ground. Her daughter would come in and cook and clean, but there wouldn't be anyone staying with us. We were fending for ourselves. So it was sink or swim, pretty fast. And it was difficult that first season, getting used to that for sure. I hated that first season, just trying to get used to everything at that same time. It was tough, really tough.
So obviously there's a lot of pressure for a 15-year-old outside of football. What is the football landscape like for you? You've talked there about modelling yourself on centre midfielders and other people that were professionals. Were you doing it at that point and seeking out advice even at 15, 16? Or was it very much just focused on your age group and trying to impress at that level?
Yeah, no, I was definitely, at that point, I was definitely trying to focus on my own age group. And the reason being, I was miles behind the rest of my group. I was doing well in Aberdeen, but when you come into the youth league and playing, even in our team, I was miles behind some of our players. We had some really good players, and I really struggled that first year to get used to it. Didn't play that many games, was out on the outskirts, wasn't enjoying it particularly. As I said, was homesick. Getting used to that side of it was difficult, and then I didn't enjoy that first year. It wasn't until the end of that first year that I started to really sort of hit my strides and really sort of get to grips with it. And it was lucky I did, because if I hadn't started, I managed to nick a couple of goals and started to feel a bit more confident myself towards the end of the youth season. But if I didn't, there's no way I'd have made a career, because it's really cutthroat business. And luckily I managed to get another year.
So was it really just the end season form that kept you there, do you think?
100%, 100%, because I'm honest enough, before that I was terrible. I was struggling, really struggling. So, there's no way they would have kept me on if I didn't pick up, and luckily I did. And as I say, I got a couple of goals, and it was probably just enough for them to justify keeping me on for another year. But the difference that made, that confidence that I got from staying on for that other year, for them saying, listen, we've seen something, but why don't you go away in the summer and work on this, and this. I took that to the extreme, really worked on my game. But it was just more the confidence that they believed in something was in me, that after that, like from there, it was like really struggling along. And from there, as soon as I got that like validation, the confidence from them, my career just took off after that.
Was there something to do with settling in then? Or was the team you joined, was the nucleus of that team boys from Dundee who'd already played together and yourself and Jerry were new? Or was there a whole host of people who were dealing with the same settling in that you were, and there maybe wasn't an advantage to anyone?
I think because the youth team, you play over the 2 years, so it's 16 to 18. So there was definitely players that were a bit more advanced than some that had been there the year before. So they'd had that settling in period. And like I got the year after, but I think it was more there's boys from the West Coast who I'd never really came across, boys from Glasgow, and how brash and abrasive they can be, but cocky, but funny, and just like it was just totally new to me, just a totally new thing. You end up loving it, but just like taken aback to start with, like how much you've got to be on your, confident in yourself and just on the front foot, because I'd never had that. In Aberdeen it's a bit different, maybe where I grew up a little bit different. So getting used to that, getting used to living down there, getting used to training every day, getting used to working, doing the YTS jobs, like all that put together, it was a massive, massive change, but it certainly helps you grow as a person for sure.
What happens over the next couple of years that you go from having a first season where you're not really helpful yourself at 16, 17 to then becoming a semi-pro footballer and being offered a full-time contract with Dundee?
It's just confidence, and it's a massive part of the game. I always say that in coaching. It's probably one of the biggest parts of the game is your own confidence, your own self-confidence. Some people have that, and I think the people that have got the self-confidence at the top level will be the players that will make it to like the elite level. They're so confident in themselves, coupled with their ability, where you've got some that sort of need the reassurance. And I think once I got that reassurance, then that just made me comfortable just to go and play my game. And then, I played like every youth game, every reserve game, and then ended up playing first team games that season when I was 17. So it was a massive change from the first year to the second year. And I think just getting used to it and, just being more comfortable in myself to really go and express myself, all sort of came together.
So you joined McCormick at the reserve team, but you did say that Jim Duffy had actually came personally to scout you in a youth cup game up in Aberdeen. Is Jim Duffy watching the reserves, or does he wait for John McCormick to come and tell him that there's people he thinks are ready?
No, Duff would be watching reserve games. Reserve games were at Dens as well, so easy to come along and watch the reserve games. I don't think he would have been at all the youth games, but he certainly was at most of them. Duff was great in terms of looking after the whole club. Cowboy, who I got on really well with, for the majority of the time I was there. He was pushing me on that second year to really push to get involved, and I was just, it was kind of strange. I was just ready for it. It was such a turnaround from the year before, where it really been, that inferiority complex and just not feeling ready for it until the next year. Ready to play first team, and it's crazy, but I think it is just that confidence and self-assurance. I was ready to go.
Jim Duffy gave you your debut versus Hamilton. What do you remember of the game?
I remember it was actually at Firhill, because Hamilton's stadium was getting built, I think, and I remember coming on as a sub for Andy Cargill. It was, I think I got about the last 20 minutes, and I just remember just thinking, it's pretty cool. I'm getting involved with the first team, and first team boys were great. He says, just come on and enjoy it. And I went and enjoyed the game. And it was, you look back and don't really think too much of it. It was obviously a huge, huge point in your career, but it's not something you think too far back on. I think my first start is different. I think I started a week later. I think that one, when you think, I'm starting for the first team, which is amazing. So, when you're young and when I had that confidence, like I say, I was just looking forward to it and just enjoying it.
And you got a good amount of game time over the next maybe 12 to 14 months, got a couple of goals. Jim Duffy then gets offered the Hibs job, and John McCormick, who you said you had a really good relationship and seemed to love you at youth level, takes over, and then you drop out the team. Did you ever really find out why that happened?
I know I can probably assume a few things. It was quite a surprise, but it's different because at youth team and reserve level, maybe he felt I was ready for that level and I was doing very well for him, but then he obviously goes up to the next level, the first team, and he maybe didn't think I was ready for that consistently week to week, which is fine. And he brought in a new set of players as well, his own players. So, looking back, at the time I was really frustrated, but looking back now, as a semi-pro coach, and I can understand that a bit more. I never really had any falling outs. We didn't have a great relationship at that point because, I was on the outer fringes and I was disappointed, but never really disruptive, but just gutted to not be involved. And, he had his own choices and he made them, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's just because I think in Europe you tend to see players who get the chance from coming from a reserve side or being involved in the club before. Like, even I know Barcelona's a whole different level to Dundee, but when Pep Guardiola came in, he took 3 or 4 from the youth team that he had worked with. Even Mikel Arteta coming back into Arsenal after Lundberg took over, they brought in people they knew from the youth system and understood the way they played. So I just found that a wee bit interesting that maybe he hadn't taken the same onus on you guys. A couple of months later, he was sacked. See, when a manager gets sacked and you're not getting game time, obviously nobody really wants anyone to lose their job, but is there a sense of relief that you're going to now get another chance potentially?
100%. It's human nature, it's not, I don't want to speak bad of people or nasty. I think any player who's not playing, and if the manager gets the bullet when you've got a clean slate to really try and revive your career, then of course you're going to want that. It was so strange how it happened because we were doing well. We were top of the league. I wasn't involved at all, really. And then he got the sack, and I don't really know why. I don't know what the full reason was behind it, whether it was a fallout with the board or whatever, because we were top of the division. So very strange. But yeah, for me, I was perfect, because in between that time, I was very close to leaving Dundee. I was going to go to Brechin, semi-pro, so I would have ripped up my contract, went to Brechin. Cowboy was really keen to sort of move me out and maybe create another space in the squad. So it was very close to happening. I mean, it was all pretty much agreed, and it was just before he ended up leaving. So, you talk about sliding door moments in your career. That's definitely one of them, because you could have been, semi-pro and getting a normal job, and never had the career I had. So you need a bit of luck in your career, and that one for me was definitely a bit of luck.
Yeah, that doing these interviews, that seems to be a common theme. Is everyone, whether it's been a footballer, a pundit, or MMA fighter, constantly refers back to you can have all the talent in the world, but sometimes it's just timing and luck that gets you there. Jockey Scott comes in, takes over. You play maybe a handful of games at the end of the season. You win the first division and get promoted to the newly formed SPL. I've heard you say before that you don't really consider yourself having a hand in that. Have you changed your opinion on that now that you've retired?
No, I haven't. No, yeah, no, I know what you mean. It was a really strange season for me, that one. It was like, I was involved a little bit. I don't think I played enough games to get a medal. That's maybe why I don't look at it as really that, not that fondly. It was great times, obviously, getting promoted, but I don't look back on it as me having a huge part in that season. And that's probably just down to the frustration of not playing as much as what I wanted. It was interesting, when Jockey came in, just got, again, just another little boost, just thinking, yeah, I've got another chance. And I just, from then, as soon as he came in, I'm saying, like, I'm going to do everything to prove to him that I'm going to be good enough to play in his team. And he came in, he says, listen, fresh slate for everyone. And we had I'm pretty sure we had a practice match like the day after or 2 days after he came in. And I can remember just thinking in that game, it was just against a junior team, local junior team, to Dundee. And I was thinking, I've got to make my mark here. And I just remember just absolutely flying in the game, just thinking, I'm just going to, from now on, this is me. I'm just going to, mentally strong, get my way back into this team. And, it worked out amazing. I had a lot of fun with Jockey.
Yeah, it feels like that's a British mentality on the medal front, is because we used to have that rule whereby you had to play 10 games to get a medal. But from listening to NFL documentaries where you've got squads of 50, 60 players and coaches, and every one of them, even from the star player down to somebody who's played a couple of minutes, praises every single person, because you might not have played a handful of games, but you were in training every single day helping everyone else in the team. So yeah. I'm glad they changed that rule to remove the 10-game cap. 98-99, newly formed SPL, you're going up a division, you're going to start working your way into the team. Everyone that I've heard interviews from talks about going from reserve football to first division to SPL, whether it be in England or Scotland or Spain, and they talk about it's a weird thing, they talk about the game becoming a little bit easier because it's less in your face and it's more time the ball. Did you find that as a young footballer as well?
To be honest, I found that throughout my career. Definitely it's. And even like you've got the division, so even from the Championship in Scotland to the Premier League in Scotland when I played, and even in England, like obviously I played in the Championship a while. There's no way the Premier League in England is as quick and as fast and as ferocious as the Championship. And I think, to be honest, the higher level probably suits me better. And that's probably why I came into the team and done all right, because I didn't start the season, but once I worked my way into the team and then get that confidence, just thinking, I belong here. I belong to be in this team. It was a great couple of seasons with Jockey.
Yeah, Dundee finished 5th that year, which was very successful for a newly promoted side. I guess the highlight of the first couple of years in the Premier League came. Would that have been on your birthday in 1999?
Ibrox?
Yep.
Yeah, it was. It was my 22nd birthday. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the game vividly. I'm a season ticket holder. I found it so bizarre. So Rangers had beat Borussia Dortmund on the Thursday night, 2-0 in the UEFA Cup. That's why it was moved to the Sunday. Right. What do you remember of that game, and what do you remember of the goal?
I remember the game just that we were doing okay. We weren't, when you go to Ibrox and Parkhead as a team like Dundee at that point, with the players that the two clubs had, it was always like, let's just like hang in the game and, see how we go, build our way into the game and not lose an early goal and try and like just get a mark in the game. And I remember the game like we're doing okay and we felt quite comfortable. And then we got the goal, and I remember the longer the game going on, I was thinking, if you get another chance, you get another chance. Let's you never know. And then for some reason I popped up in the box in the last minute, and Stephen Boyack, obviously ex-Rangers player, youth player, put the ball over to me, and I've just managed to take a touch and just drill it. And then I think it was that late on that it was like we're going to win this game. Like we're actually going to be Rangers at Ibrox. Like last minute, I've just scored a goal, and I was just thinking, wow, this is amazing. I mean, for a team like Dundee coming up and doing that, it was brilliant. And I think they had another maybe one or two chances even after that, because they had the onslaught going towards the end of the game. I was just thinking, just praying like, hold on, this will be amazing. So it was amazing. That it was 22nd birthday, I'm pretty sure. It was a Sunday, and I went straight back up the road to Aberdeen and went out with my mates for my birthday, and it was a good night.
Yeah, it's just something you said earlier. It's just interesting there. So the player you lost there was Rod Wallace, who would obviously been a centre forward, and you talked earlier about recognising when players were done and not concentrating. So it's just funny to hear that that's probably one of those moments where you've looked at Rod Wallace and went, he's not following me into this box if I go.
100%. And I've done it. He used to always like, I can't remember it being Rod Wallace right enough. Like I can't remember that vividly, but I remember thinking, if we get a chance, I'm going because I could do it. I could keep going, and luckily it sort of worked out. And my first touch wasn't that great. I remember coming down on my chest and it sort of hit my thigh, but it sat up perfect. I was just like, I'm going to just drill it as hard as I can, low and hard, and luckily it went in.
So he's finished 9th that season, which again is fine for a team that's just been promoted. That you're now becoming a stable SPL side. Summer 2000. When do you find out that Ivano's going to take over as manager and his brother Dario's coming in as assistant?
I think it was just like there was loads of rumours going about, but nothing was confirmed until I think it was maybe 2 games to go before the end of the season. So we got told that Jockey was going to go and the Benetti brothers were coming in basically, and we're like, all right, okay, no worries. So I think what the Mars, Peter and Jimmy Marr, who obviously were running the club at that point, were trying to do was, I think it was Atletico Madrid or Real Sociedad or something, had this model where they signed players from all over, young players, and signed them and then built them up and then sold them. But I'm pretty sure, would that have been around about when would Bosman have been? Would that have been before that or after that? That was before that. Before that. So something happened around about that stage that the model, something happened with the model that it wasn't going to work anymore, but I think they were already invested with Benitez anyway, so sort of just seen it through. But I think that was the idea behind it. And maybe down the line it didn't work out that obviously, but I think that's what the idea was coming from. And yeah, no, we didn't know who they were. Obviously you do a bit of research at the time, but we didn't know who they were.
A lot of British boys were sold from the team or released from the team. Cavallero, Wansera, Caniggia and Nemsadze all came in. What was the feel around the place? Because I think at that point, I looked at the squad yesterday, there was 10 Scottish boys left in the first team squad. So the majority of the squad was made up of people from outside the UK. How did that feel like, and how were you spoken to that you were going to stay?
I think it's maybe just the boys that were out of contract that left, and then everyone else that was still had a contract maybe stayed. Yeah, no, it was interesting times. I mean, the season before, well, I've said it before, I think I played every single game bar one. So I played 35 out of 36, every single minute of every Premier League game apart from one, and that was up at Aberdeen because of back injury, which I was gutted about. And Big Elvis, I think he was at Hearts at the time, Big Presley, was the only man to do every single game. So I was doing. So we came into that next pre-season with the Benitez, not knowing what to expect, and it was totally different to anything we'd expected. Totally different.
Yeah, so it basically becomes a non-Scottish environment. Does training change? I've talked to people who are playing out in Portugal and Italy and even in Australia, and they constantly talk about how training is vastly different when you go abroad. It's tactical, technical, it's shaping sessions rather than running and getting the ball out. Did you enjoy any of that side of the game, or would you have preferred it was the way you were used to?
I think it was more just the culture shock. It definitely changed. Like it changed like full circle. Like you say, it was. And I think especially with the Italians, with the Benitez, because like everyone's the Italians are renowned for their tactical knowledge and their tactical know-how in the game, and doing stuff within games that can nullify opposition and stuff. So it was totally different. The training, the pre-season was totally different. We went for 3 weeks up mountains in Italy. It was totally secluded. It was really pretty boring. It was like 3 sessions a day, and there was just nothing happening. You had to go to your room in the afternoon, and just totally different to what we were used to, and tough to get used to start with. Scottish mentality and Scottish culture when I've been growing up, when I was playing football, was always like, we'll work hard. We'll work harder than most people. We'll work our socks off because that's what we've got. That's in our determination. That's what we are. But I just wanted to sort of continue what we've been doing, and you have fun with that work. Whereas the culture and the training was much more tactical, much more fitness based, and less about the fun side. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It was just difficult to get used to start with. So yeah, total culture shock, totally different to what we've been used to. Really difficult to get your head around. But if I look back now, it's probably helped a lot in terms of my understanding of the tactical side of the game.
So you went from playing almost every minute, every game the season before, and you've came in and you've said previously on an interview that they called you number 12. Did you feel that there was a bit of frustration from yourself that you weren't getting played? They almost didn't even know who you were, despite having been such a key and integral part of the team the season before?
I was absolutely fuming, I'll be honest. I was livid. You know what? And I felt a bit disrespected because I'd been at the club for years. I'm not my panning to get the club, to be part of getting the club to the top level, to play every game at the top level. And I'm thinking that my career's going the right way. And now they don't even want to look into the research or worry about the players that were here previously. But that's, I was pretty young and, ballsy and just gutted about how that came about. But then you get your head around it and you realise you're going to have to work your way back into a team. And it was difficult, really difficult. I wasn't even on the bench to start with the first few games. I wasn't even involved. So like you say, I've came from playing every game the year before to not even part of the squad, and just to unknown players to me coming in and taking my spot. And to be honest, I didn't think some of the players were outstanding, the ones you mentioned. But some of the other ones that came in I didn't feel they were better than me, and I was ready to carry on and be part of the team. So I was like, no, I'm not having that. So it's something you speak to young players about. It's just having that resilience and just keep going. And just, if somebody says, or they think you're not the best or you're not good enough, you just prove them wrong and just keep trying to prove them wrong. And you've got to have that, or else you're not going to sustain a career in the game, because there's going to be plenty of folk that doubt you.
Yeah, it is interesting you say that, because I think a lot of people like myself who aren't Dundee fans remember that Dundee side fondly because of the players like Knigia and Msadze, Kisnesvili. But when I looked at that squad and you get down the list, it's a who's who of people that you forgot even existed in the league. A red card in a game when you have been on the bench gives you your chance. Is that, again, just something you talked about before? A bit of luck, you get an opportunity and then run from it?
100%. That's that again. Another sliding door moment in my career is finally I'd been on the bench because maybe they had injuries. I wouldn't have been the first choice to be on the bench. I was on the bench. I was a centre midfielder. Patricio Bellio, centre midfielder, gets sent off a pretty naughty challenge down at St Mirren. They probably looked around and thought, oh well, no, it's just centre midfielder. You go. Maybe not being that bothered about who it was, but because that was my position, I got chucked on. Done pretty well for the rest of the game, and because he'd been out for a couple of games suspended, got the opportunity to crack on and keep my position, and then never looked back from there. Really, really just grabbed it with both hands. And I think because I was so angry and just really wanted to be part of the team, I was just thinking, if I get a chance here, I am staying in this team. I'm doing everything in my power to stay in this team, and that's a good thing. It makes you realise what you were missing, and that you get satisfaction from fighting back to get back in the team. And once I was in the team, like you say, some of the teams, some of the players, was some of the most enjoyable football I've probably played in my career. Getting to play with some of these players and the way we played.
Yeah, and it's just interesting you said that about the Benettis, because I looked at some of the results that they got in their first season. So I think it was marred by draws. I think he drew like 50% of your games, but he's won at Ibrox and Parkhead. Do you think there is maybe a bit of that Italian tactical side, now that you mention it, that because they knew Rangers and Celtic before they got here, they maybe had a bit more information on how to set up against those teams, and when they came up against the likes of Dundee United, St Mirren, Falkirk, they maybe didn't know what to do?
It's a good question, and I'll be honest, it's probably the opposite, and I'll tell you why. Because what they did, and which I loved about what they did, it didn't matter who we were playing, it was like they could not care who the opposition was in terms of this is how we play. This is how we're going to play. Didn't matter if we were at Ibrox, Parkhead, Tannadice, or at Dens. This is how we play. And I actually loved that about them, that they didn't go to Ibrox or Parkhead and like change their formation really defensively. And it was, we're playing how we play, and that's it. I don't care who we're playing. I love that sort of arrogance about them and the belief in their own systems. That's something that I really liked about what they've done. It was interesting to see somebody with that mentality. It was, and it certainly worked. You know, we went to Parkhead and Ibrox, just like, cares, man, just let's go, give us the ball, let's play. And it worked for sure.
How do you look back at your time under the Benetti brothers then?
Probably some of the most enjoyable football I played. I mean, I made my debut for Scotland playing for them at that point. It was tough to start with, but once I gained their trust, like the relationship I had with the manager was one of the best relationships I've had with any manager. He backed me like so much, and it just gave me the confidence to go and prove my worth, and I loved it. I absolutely really enjoyed it.
So the Benetti brothers leave, Jim Duffy comes in. 2002-2003 is probably the most memorable season at Dundee. You finished sixth in the league. You'd played, I think again, you'd actually played all but maybe one game. I don't think you'd started every game. And then you set up for the end of season clash at Hampden, Rangers versus Celtic, Rangers versus Dundee. The round before that, you were the captain against Inverness, is that correct?
Yeah, Barry was out suspended, that's right.
Late goal from outside the box. Nemsadze laid off by Caballero. You've spoken about him before. I just want to get the quote right. You said Caballero was probably the best player you ever played with on weight of pass.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, I mean, it was like every single time, because at that time I was a box-to-box midfielder and I'd make the runs in behind. In terms of link-up play, he was unbelievable. You know, I had a really good relationship with Kanija as well, where I would play the ball to him and he would make the return pass, and it was good. But Caballero is just how accurate he was with that pass and the speed of the pass. It was every time it was perfect for me to either hit first time or lay back to him. But it was just the weight of pass was amazing.
And that's what it was for them. Sad's goal. It was a first time finish. So Rangers versus Dundee. What do you remember of the build up? Have you got any nerves? This is the first time you're going to a major cup final.
No, I was nervous. You know, I didn't really get nervous too many times in my career. A couple of times, maybe touch on that later. But I was just looking forward to it. I was ready for it. You know, I was at that stage in my career where I was ready for it. The build-up was good. It was, you know, a couple of us, Dundee being in the Scottish Cup final. It was amazing. With a good group of boys, with Duff obviously being the manager. He was a fantastic manager as well. So I was just looking forward to it. All my family was coming down, and it's probably, you know, stuff you grow up. I grew up obviously watching Scottish Cup finals on the TV all the time, so to be part of it was just like, yeah, amazing. You know, I'm living for this. This is why I wanted to be a pro, so I'm ready for it.
What was the mood in the changing room like after the game? Because I remember the game vividly. Rangers had just won the title, and I've heard numerous stories of how the players were partying on the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Rangers were awful in that game.
Yeah. I hear all the stories as well, and it's like a dagger in the heart, just because we played well. I thought we were a better team on the day. Rangers didn't play particularly well, like we've sort of mentioned. They were out on their feet. They were going for the treble, but yeah, we felt like we could have won it. And in all the cup finals I've played in, it's been like one goal defeats. Could easily have went the other way, but fell on the other side. You know, I played Scottish Youth Cup final against Celtic and got beat. Played the Scottish Cup final, obviously got beat 1-0, and played the FA Cup final, got beat 1-0. So all games were very similar. But the one against Rangers, I remember it being a boiling hot day. And we played pretty well. Barry hit the post early doors, I think, and yeah, we just couldn't go over the line. And obviously, Amarusa got the goal from the corner. Yeah,
I guess the silver lining to that on such a remarkable season was Rangers had won the league, so they qualified for the Champions League. So going into that match, you knew Dundee were already qualified for the preliminary rounds of the UEFA Cup. Have you hit a cleaner strike in your whole career than that goal?
Nah, no way, nah. No way. Yeah, no, that's definitely, it's the sweetest strike I've ever had. Funny that it just came down perfect. There's a funny story behind that. I was actually at my sister's wedding on the Sunday, so the game was a Thursday. The Duff gave me the Monday off because obviously at my sister's wedding on the Sunday. Absolutely steaming at my sister's wedding on the Sunday night. Sick everywhere, drinking champagne with my sister and my brother-in-law and my family, and then came into the game on the Thursday and had probably one of my best games. But it just shows you, preparation is not always key.
Yeah, I guess looking back at your Dundee career, there was a load of good goals when I was looking through that. So that's probably, I would say it's probably the cleanest strike. But there's another goal. You've scored a few. There's a goal at Rugby Park when you've just been promoted to the SPA. There's a goal at McDermott Park on your left. Yep. What one is your favourite Dundee goal?
I think the one in Europe, the volley in Europe, because it's the one that sort of everyone remembers, and I can remember just hitting it so cleanly, and it was a European game at Dens and it was packed. I think that's probably the one I look back on with most sort of fondness. The last minute goal at Ibrox is big as well. The left foot strike at McDermott, just because it's my left foot, just like it shows you the level of confidence. I was playing with at that point where I think it was Momo Silla had a terrible clearance. I took a touch on my left foot and then just banged it with my left foot right in the top corner. I'm just thinking, like, where's that come from? But it just shows you, when you're playing with confidence, you can do stuff like that. And I think the goal against Vlasnia is probably still my favourite.
Yeah, and you get knocked out, unfortunately, by Perugia in the following round. So mid-October 2003, do you guys have any inkling at all that the club's in financial trouble?
Yeah, I think wherever you're at as a player, you can always hear the jungle drums sort of beating, and you're thinking, the writing's on the wall because of some of the players we had and what we're paying them. Allegedly, you're thinking, wow, how's this going to work? Economics doesn't work like that, and we're not a massive club. We don't have a massive benefactor. I think the Mars were, pretty well off, but, not to the level I think that we were trying to play in that league. So I think people were talking about it, but we definitely didn't realise just how bad it was. No way.
What actually happens then when you find out the club goes into administration? Does the control of the club just get handed over to administrators? And do you guys have meetings with the staff to find out what's actually going on?
It's as simple as that. It was got told in administration, there's a meeting at the stadium tomorrow morning, say. And I can remember one of the board members couldn't even speak because he was devastated. Like, he was in tears. He was gutted about what had happened. And basically how it happened with us was Duff ended up doing it. So Duff had a list of, like, say we had a squad of maybe 30, say. He had a list of 15 players that were going to get kept and 15 players that were going to get released, like, that minute. If your name was read out, that was it, you were done. So it was like reading out all these names, get your boots, the administrator will be in touch, your contract's ripped up, basically. And that's like, some of these boys I'd been with at the club for like 8 years. My brother-in-law was there. Mark Robertson's my brother-in-law. He was part of the players that got, let go. So it's a horrible day. Horrible situation. There's people from the stadium who work there getting released, getting told their jobs were gone. It was terrible. It was horrible time.
So I guess, do you think you were maybe kept on as a result of probably being one of the most prized assets at the club at the time?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely the reason I was kept on, for sure. Was to hopefully sell me, as soon as possible to try and gain some money for the club, without a doubt. Did
you, the club or your agent, know about the interest from Rangers at that point, or the Rangers' interest kind of spike up when they realised there is an administration problem at Dundee?
I think there was interest from Rangers before that. So, I'd had a few little nibbles from Rangers before that. I was actually very close to moving to Rangers before when Dick Advocat was the manager. And then he left quite abruptly, and then sort of that goes, and then there was more interest again. I'd always played pretty well against Rangers, just scored a couple of goals, and you try and it must just stick out, at the board level or whatever. And then obviously Alec McLeish had been inquiring to my agent. But yeah, then that was October, and obviously I don't know if that sort of spiked their interest, but certainly they were even more aware of the situation.
So the interest from Rangers want you. Dundee obviously have a valuation of you, which ended up being $250,000. When you're moving to a club and they're trying to get you for 50 grand under the club's valuation, does that annoy you a bit as a professional? That the club wants you, but they're only willing to pay X?
Nah, it didn't bother me. I can understand the business side of it and why they were trying to do it, but I didn't think it devalued me. I just think, they're trying to do the best by their club and could have sort of accept that. But in the same instance, I was just really keen for Dundee to do as well out of it as what they could have as well. And, we've done everything in my power to make that happen.
And ironically, as someone who could have been let go at 17 for not performing well in the youth team, you almost went to Brecon at some point when you were in the first division. You got into a Scottish Cup final, played and scored in Europe, and then the money kind of kept the club running, essentially, for the next few months. So I guess that's kind of a nice feeling to leave behind and move on with no real regrets and no real animosity from the fans.
No, definitely. I mean, I think at that time it was the right move for me in terms of where my career was at. I was ready for that next level. It worked for Dundee because they got a bit of money. It worked for Rangers because they got me for a certain amount of money. It worked for everyone at that point. I was just really glad that Dundee managed to get something. I can remember, there was something in my contract that I was to get a certain percentage of the transfer deal because that sometimes happened back then. But Duff was quite keen for me to sort of leave that behind for
right.
Club and the youth. He's make it. He says it will go directly to the youth academy and keeping that going. I says, listen, 100%, let's do it. It made sense for everyone, and I wasn't going to stick on that. So and it was a nice touch. And the way Duff sort of sold it to me, he sold me down the river. I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's do that. So it was good.
Rangers at the time, when you'd agreed to sign, you wouldn't be able to sign officially till the 1st of January. We had a load of injuries, so Nell and Gremis and Hughes were out. Moles wasn't even fit, so we couldn't even play free up front. Did you know when you signed that we were really needing you to come in and play right away in that Old Firm?
Yeah, I think when I spoke to Alex McLeish, he was saying we're desperate to get it done, providing you're fit, then you'll play. And I was like, yeah, perfect, let's do it.
How bad was the hamstring injury when you signed?
It wasn't too bad. It was one of these ones that I've had throughout my career a few times. Just a niggling hamstring injury. It's more tendinopathy. It's more it doesn't fully go, but it goes enough to sort of hamper you within games. You can feel it tighten up. So I could always manipulate and get out of it within quite a quick time in 1 to 2 weeks. Sorry. But the problem I had when I went to Rangers was I'd never had really any injuries at Dundee. So I didn't really know how to treat myself in terms of making sure I was 100% ready to go. I had loads of MRIs, but before within the medical for Rangers to make sure it was fine. So they'd done MRIs, we'd done ultrasounds on my hammies. I'd done a fitness test. I trained with the team twice. So it was we'd done everything in terms of trying to make sure it was fine. But the difference between training and games is always different. And unfortunately, it went that first game after about 30 minutes, and it sort of set the tone for the move, unfortunately.
Yeah, so you went off in a game that Rangers eventually lost at Parkhead. You returned to the squad 7 weeks later. You play away at Hearts. You played the full 90 minutes, I believe, in that game. Did that feel maybe a wee bit unusual, or had the hamstring just healed completely?
I'd give it 7 weeks, so I'd actually give it an extra few weeks in what it possibly could have, and that was down to me, saying I've got to be right. It's different at Dundee. I knew I could get in and out of the team at Dundee. I was good enough to pop in and out of the team and felt good. But whereas now I was at Rangers next level, and I needed to make sure I was right to be able to give myself a chance to play. Plus the medical staff, says, listen, let's make sure this is right. We'll give it an extra couple of weeks, do an extra couple of weeks sprint training just to make sure you're fine. And then, came back into the team and felt fine. So I think I played, a good few games in a row, which was good.
Yeah, your following game was at home, so you finally made your Ibrox debut at home, and that was ironically against your old team Dundee. You scored in that game. What do you remember of the strike?
I can remember I took a great touch at the edge of the box. I can remember Chicho Hernandez, who played left back for Dundee, who's obviously these are all my mates, but he played left back, and I can remember skinning him. Like I remember like pretending I was going to shoot my left, sort of turn back on my right, and then managing to half volley it into the goal. And like people say, about not celebrating against your old club. I went off my nut. I went bananas. I was buzzing, and just pure relief. I was like totally. But it was nothing against Dundee. I was just delighted to get that chance and to be fit and to score at Ibrox from a new club. I was delighted. So I'm not sure I agree with all the not celebrating goals against your old club anyway. So I was like, yeah, buzzing. I'm scored a goal from a new club. I was delighted.
I hate it, but it's normally strikers that are saying that, and they tend to score hundreds of goals, so it's all right for them not to celebrate a few.
That's true.
You get an Old Firm at Ibrox, Rangers against Celtic. How did that finally feel to get on an Old Firm?
It's good. Now, most of the Old Firm games I felt I did okay. In all the Old Firm games I played, I always felt I played pretty well, like one of our best performers, and just loved the occasion, loved being involved in it. Didn't have a particularly good record, and obviously that's disappointing. But personally, I felt I'd done okay in most of that games against Celtic. But yeah, just to be involved in an occasion like that is huge.
And then, so like I said, you were in the Rangers team. You were pretty much a starter every week. Dundee United away, a 3-3 draw. Was it your ACL you done, or was you twist your knee?
Yeah, ACL. So what happened was I just sort of like stretched for a ball, and then just felt my knee like. When I planted my knee, just felt it go. And like, if anyone who's done their ACL, like it's agony for like a minute, like really sore for like a minute, and then it feels fine. And then so I was thinking, it feels all right. So Big Stevie Tom's like, how's it feel? And I said, it feels all right. He said, come on in, let's go. So I went to get back up, and I could feel it. And by this time, the physio's on, and he's like, listen, let me just check it. So he checked it. He says, off. I was like, all right, okay. Next day, my knee was huge. It was like proper swollen the next day. So I knew then it was going to be pretty serious. I hadn't ruptured it to start with, I'd stretched it. So what we did was try and rehab without the operation. So I was in a brace for 3 months. Looking back now and towards the end of my career, I would never have done that. I'd have just got the operation straight away. But I'd never had an operation in football in my life, so I was probably more apprehensive about not getting one. But yeah, I ended up trying to rehab, didn't work, and then eventually had to get the operation.
And then in amongst that rehab, when you were coming back in operation, your right quadricep tendon went as well?
Correct. And that's probably the worst. That was probably my worst injury, because it's not a common injury for footballers. It's more for basketball players. I'd had so many specialists all over the UK. Then we started looking more worldwide. The doc at Rangers was great in terms of, trying to help me get to the bottom of it. I tried so many different things. I had so many injections in my knee. It just kept deteriorating. And I just I basically couldn't use my leg. Like I was getting in and out of my car. I had to like lift my leg in and out of my car because it just wasn't working, like, the tendon. So I was in a bit of bother. And then luckily we managed to source this guy who was in Sweden. He was actually the Swedish Olympic doctor, but he was a specialist in tendons. Hakan Alfredsson, I always remember his name because he basically saved my career. Went out and seen him. He says, I'm going to give you one injection. If that doesn't work, you're going to come back and I'm going to operate on you because you need it. So went, done the injection again, felt great. Couple of weeks, deteriorating, and then it went again. And then so I ended up getting the operation in the summer. And then from then, you've got to have 10 weeks non-weight bearing. You've got to inject yourself with like blood thinners every day because of the stuff that you're taking, the medication. And then you can start rehabbing. And it's special type of rehab that nobody in Murray Park had done before. So, I'd got this like special wooden eccentric load board that I used. It was my board. Basically, I'd done so many squats on this board with my knee and dips. And that's basically what got me back. But it was a terrible time. It was like overall 2 years I was out.
So you missed the 2004-05 campaign when we won the league. When you're rehabbing and you're in the gym all the time, what is the squad setup like? Arsene Wenger in his book wrote something that he changed in about 2004, 2005, and I think it was after Robert Perez's knee injury in 2002. And he actually made sure that players were in the gym at the same time as injured players were doing the rehab for players' mental side. Is that the toughest part of being out for so long, being away from teammates? And did Alex McLeish have a similar setup whereby you were in with other players?
I don't know if he done it on purpose, but just with the way Murray Park is set up, like the players were always like the main gym. All the players go in for their prehab before training, and they'll come in after training. It's like the main hub. So luckily, I had that. Don't get me wrong. When all the players are out training and you're in the gym yourself, or maybe with somebody else that's injured, then you're on your own, and you have to look after yourself, and that's really tough to get used to. And it's more of a mental challenge. The most difficult part for me was accepting that I got this move to Rangers, and I just wasn't getting to enjoy it. I was watching the boys training on a beautiful training ground every day. There's Ibrox games every week. I'm at every game. I used to go every game, supporting the lads in the dressing room, but just not getting to enjoy the move that I'd sort of waited so long for. That was tough. And obviously, a big club, there's new signings coming in all the time. So I think they must have signed about 5 players within that, 5 centre midfielders within that time. That I was out, which was like thinking, oh, here we go. You go further down the ladder, and it's going to be even tougher to get back. So there's all that to deal with. It did help in terms of myself, in terms of mental strength. And I just used to rigorously work exactly to what the physio told me. He gave me a set program every day, and I just done it. Just made sure I nailed it every day.
And after about 18 months out, you got back in the side at the end of the 2005-2006 season. Alex McLeish was finishing up at Rangers. Rangers to finish 3rd in the league. Paul Le Guen's coming into Rangers, so he was expected to go to Real Madrid at the time and didn't for whatever reason, and ended up agreeing to come and take over Rangers. I remember the excitement amongst me and all my friends. How was that for you, knowing that you were fully fit and one of the most sought-after coaches in Europe was coming into the club?
I was buzzing, yeah. I think, to be honest, most of the players were. Alex McLeish had done well, and obviously they decided to move on, and we thanked him for what he'd done for us, and it was a fresh start for everyone. And I was really looking forward to it. I was, as you say, I was fit. I just came back from playing for Scotland, ready to hit the ground running in the new season, and really looking forward to a prestigious appointment that, like you say, there was talking Real Madrid were looking for him. He'd done very well where he was at Lyon. So yeah, everyone was pumped, I think.
So you talked about the difference between Jockey Scott and the Bonetti brothers. What's the difference between an Alex McLeish training session and a Paul Le Guen pre-season?
Yeah, very good point. Very similar in terms of total culture change. Even like to the point where going out to training, and when you're doing your warm up and you're stretching in training, pre-training, you weren't even allowed to like talk or joke. Whereas that's normal for us. It doesn't mean we're not working hard. It's just banter. It's what we've grown up with. It's what you enjoy. But it was like you had to be fully focused, and you understand the mentality behind it. But definitely difficult to get used to. Different runs, different ways of doing things. Again, total change, total shift, and maybe not as easy to get used to as what people thought it was going to be.
How did the players react? Like the more experienced players, to Paul Le Guen changing the way it was, what they were used to. Players like yourself who have came through, Barry Ferguson has come through Scottish football, youth football, and then it's this change. I remember the opening game for Rangers away to Motherwell, a game we won 2-1. We probably could have won that game by about 7 or 8, and it was probably the best football I'd seen us play. And then nothing really followed up after that. Yeah.
No, it was, any people don't like change, not just footballers, it's just human nature. You don't like change, and you've got to adapt. And, if you've got to have that ability to be able to adapt. If you don't, then it can be tough, not just in football, but in any environment. So I think the older you are, the more set in your ways and what you're used to, then it becomes more difficult for sure. But you've got to be able to do it. And to be honest, I think most of the boys did. Most of the boys embraced it and think, that's a bit different, but let's see it. It might be amazing for us. It might be the best thing that's ever happened to us in our career. So let's let's go for it. We're all professionals. That's the main thing. Scottish boys are normally really professional, and they'll work. They'll do what they need to do. Whether they like it or not, they'll still work. That's one thing I don't think you can hold against Scottish lads.
So when he first comes in, obviously there's no results to compare to. The training changes. There's maybe a bit of confusion, maybe not as excited about training as you thought you were going to be. And then the results turn. Is that when people start to look at it, even players within the camp and the fans even, going, this guy came from Lyon where they were getting to semi-finals of Champions Leagues. We weren't sure about the training. Now the results aren't coming. Is that when it starts to turn?
I think at a club like Rangers, if you're not getting results, then it's always going to be really difficult. Just with the scrutiny, just with the pressure you're under, and with the club. The club like Rangers are expected to win every single game. And I can remember some of the games, like after we maybe lost a game, I think it was maybe up at Inverness or with a rubbish result, and coming into the dressing room, and obviously we're all devastated and we're like gutted. And I remember Le Guin just being like, "No, it's okay, relax, it's fine, we'll get back to it." And it's just like, wait, what? Like that's not how we operate. It's not with a club of this magnitude what is expected. And it was just different. And it does, the biggest thing is results. Clubs like Rangers and these top clubs in the world, it's results. If you don't get them, there's going to be pressure, there's going to be disharmony, because it's a team of winners. You're there because you're a winner. You want to be winning things, and we weren't getting close to that. So that was disappointing. It was difficult.
It is very interesting to look back, because Paul Le Guin at Lyon, he actually only had like a 2% better win rate than he did at Rangers. So obviously it is just that pressure of the league. Rangers being expected to hit 70-75% win rate and not 53%. It's just not acceptable where it maybe is. And maybe you can win the league in France because there's so many teams vying to win the league that you can get away with it. You didn't play an awful lot under Paul Le Guin. So you came on at Rugby Park, you get 10 minutes at Aberdeen. Did he ever explain to you, or did Yves Kalou ever explain to you what you weren't doing and what you had to do to get in? Because I looked at the team, Himdami, Clement, Ferguson in centre mid, you Thomas Buffel playing as a 10, Charlie Adams having to play wide when he was an actual centre midfielder. Was it just quality, and where you've been spoken to as to what you had to do?
Yeah, listen, I think the three guys you mentioned there are obviously very, very good players. But yeah, no, I just never really got a chance. Never really got a chance to sort of stake my claim, even though, I got on really well with Le Guin, and like I sort of mentioned, I was dedicated to my craft and really professional. So I was never disruptive, and I was always training as hard as I could and try to get in the team. Sometimes I look back and were they better players than me? Possibly, yeah. And that's maybe just the end of it. If you're being brutally honest, but I still don't feel I got the chance to really stake a claim, so that's disappointing, but it's by the by now.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting to hear you say that you played centre-half when you were younger, and I think you'd said as well, Craig Brown had said that he saw you kind of moving back there. I really found it interesting that we'd chosen to play Himdani in there, who wasn't a fit. Himdani's one of those players that you talked about there, that when Rangers played in Europe, Himdani looked like a world beater, and then when players were in his face against Dundee, he seemed to drop off a bit. So I would have thought maybe that you could have been an option at centre-half at the time. What happens when Barry Ferguson walks out after his falling out with Paul Le Guin and he's told that he won't play for Rangers again? Why does Paul Le Guin approach you to be captain, someone that's not been in the team? Do you think that's actually the reason to get outside the 16-man squad and get a fresh face in?
Yeah, it's a good question. No idea, to be honest. When Baz came out of the dressing room, I can just remember him out of the manager's office. I just remember him just like in disbelief, just saying like, "Well, no, it's you just told me no, I'm not captain." I think everyone was just like, "What? Serious?" And then he called me in, and then he says, "I'm making you captain." I was like, "Right, okay." And as I sort of mentioned, I think it was more just because of the professional I am. Like, I'm proper professional in training and in everything I do, around the place. Whether it was that, whether it was to make a point, whether it was to find an escape route, I don't know. But it could be all them things. It could have been all them things.
Did you ever get an explanation from him or Yves as to what happened after they left, or do you just think it was pretty much a huge disrespect to you and it was a stitch-up job?
That's probably the biggest thing. I've spoken about it before. That's probably the most disappointing part for me was, when he did leave, I never heard from him again. Like, he never called me. So I was like, brilliant, cheers. So I've just been absolutely destroyed for becoming captain of Rangers because I wasn't playing, to you leaving, and then you've not even said anything. So I was thinking, brilliant, cheers. So yeah, I'm disappointed that he'd done that. If he'd spoke to me and says, listen, I'm sorry for putting you in that position, or sorry it worked out like that, and thanks for all your help, then fine. But it wasn't. And I sort of mentioned we talked about being nervous. Then I was 2 games in my career, FA Cup final, and that game against Motherwell when I was captain, the first game I was captain, because I was thinking, like, I wasn't even playing. So first of all, I had to come into the team and prove my worth within the team, plus with the scrutiny of now being the captain, plus with the fact that he's took it off Baz as well. So I was just like, yeah, wow. I mean, I was delighted we managed to get the win, but going into that game was terrible. I wasn't looking forward to it at all. No?
We get the win. Walter Smith comes back to Rangers as manager. Barry Ferguson comes back in, reinstated as captain. Were you a wee bit surprised that you were then taking out the team so quickly?
Not really, no. I mean, not really. There's great players at Rangers, and Barry, obviously, fantastic player, so comes back into the team, and yeah, no issue at all from my side. Obviously, I'd like to have kept playing and get a chance under Walter as well, but massive respect for Walter, and nothing but praise for him as a manager. I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, and end of that season, you decide to leave Rangers after a few seasons. 20 games, 2 or 3 goals. I think Partick Thistle, Dundee, and then you scored against Hearts in one of your last games. You were offered a contract to stay at Rangers. Was it just because of playing time? And is it maybe a case of you kind of wanted to see the back of it, not Rangers the club, but the spell that you'd had?
Without a doubt, that's definitely part of it. It was more about just a fresh start. I'd had a terrible time with injury. It didn't really work out the way the club would have liked, or I would have liked. I was torn because it's Walter saying, like, listen, there's a possible opportunity for you to stay for another year if you want it. And with him, I've got nothing but respect for Walter. I mean, I've got so much in awe of him and what he is as a coach and a manager, and his personality. But it was just the right time. It was the right time for me to move and just get a fresh start, get away from it, and try and get back to enjoying football again.
Norwich were interested, Cardiff were interested, but he ended up choosing Cardiff. Ironically, for a player who'd been out for so long, injury at Rangers, you actually found yourself getting into the Cardiff team because Ricky Simica had suffered a long-term injury. How did you feel about the level in the Championship? Is the Championship a sidestep to the SPL, or is it lower or higher a level?
I think it's very similar. Very similar. I think there's some teams are maybe below. I'm saying that it's difficult. I mean, there's some huge teams in the Championship. I can remember what I loved about it was just the fact that it was new stadiums, huge clubs we were playing against, and just having a fresh start. But yeah, it's definitely a really competitive league. It's grueling. It's Saturday, Tuesday. There's 46 games, so there's a lot more games. It's a grueling league. It's certainly, if you do manage to get out of that league and go up the way, then fair play, because you've done well to get out of that league, because it's a tough league with huge clubs.
What's the training like in the Championship? There was something interesting you said about the Benetti brothers there, whereby they didn't care who they were playing when it was coming up. The Championship's a 46-game league. You're playing Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, Wednesday most weeks.
Yeah.
Do the managers take that same outlook in the Championship, or is there preparation for your opponent?
Sometimes. Most of the training in the Championship is just ticking over. It's just like, because there's so many games, it's just like, just get the boys that have been playing most of the games, just get them ticking over, warm down, just make sure all the boys are ready to go again. The other boys that haven't played, maybe a little bit of training. So very rarely you can do like too much sort of big team tactical work until it comes towards the weekend and the Friday and Thursday and Friday you can do that. But yeah, it's not because of how grueling it is. You probably don't get as much time to work on the tactic side as whereas in Scotland it's just every week. You play normally Saturday, or certainly Dundee we were Saturday. Whereas at Rangers and Celtic is different, where it's Sunday and Saturday, depending on kick-off times and stuff. But Dundee, it was like Saturday. So you knew your schedule, so you could do a lot more tactical work. In the Championship, it's just like ticking over and just making sure the boys are right.
And you had found your fitness again. You were playing regularly every week. January 2008, Chasetown away. It's the start of Cardiff's FA Cup run, the 2008 season. Alongside you that day is Aaron Ramsey. When you came into the club, there was a lot of hype about Aaron Ramsey. I'd even heard about him that season. Yeah. When you trained with him, like maybe the first couple of weeks, did you see what you had heard, or was it maybe somebody that was trying to prove himself?
It's interesting. When I was signing for Cardiff, like everyone was talking about this kid coming through, obviously Aaron Rambo, and saying he's going to be like the next Gerrard, or he's going to be such a good player. He's got so much ability and that. It's like, I'm really looking forward to seeing this kid. And it was his first. He'd left school, and it was his first YTS or first season as a professional, training every day. And the first few months, he struggled. He struggled not to. He wasn't involved in the first team. I mean, but he wasn't really. I could obviously watch some of the reserves and the youth team games, and he sort of struggled a bit. As soon as he got used to, his body got used to training every day, he was outrageous for a 16-year-old. Amazing, like the best young player I've seen by a mile. He was. He had everything. Could score goals. Great finisher. Left foot, right foot. He was strong enough. He was quick enough. Ability, awareness, match awareness. But the biggest thing he had was his mentality, just like no fear at all. He was just like, just give me the ball. Whatever. I don't care who I'm playing against. And it was like, we played young v old every Friday, as you do. And some of the games, he was running the sessions as a 16-year-old. He was phenomenal.
I think what's forgotten a lot, and I've kept saying this doing these interviews, is that footballers are human beings. You talked about it moving away from Aberdeen to Dundee in the first couple of years. You maybe hadn't done yourself justice, and talking about Aaron Ramsey being a young boy moving into digs and stuff at Cardiff being the exact same. So I think you can see players are human beings, and when they do settle, you're probably going to see the footballer. You got past Chelmsford, so you avoided the cup shock. I think probably the biggest shock in that run was Middlesbrough, who were a really strong Premiership side at the time. They'd been in the UEFA Cup 2 seasons before that. Rockenbach, Stuart Down in the midfield, Afonso Alves, who they'd just paid 25 million for up front. What was that game like when you're playing against a Premier League side and you finally get to test yourself and see what the next step would be like?
It was great. I mean, that run, we were just buzzing because we go to Middlesbrough away, not as obviously not favourites. Wanted to just put on a show. We're in the cup. Let's just go and prove, how good a team we are, how good a team we could be, and the players we've got. And that day, everything just sort of fell into place. We played really well that day. Managed to get the goals and really just get the win. But on the day, we were the better team on the day. We weren't in awe of Middlesbrough. We more than held our own. But we had some really good players in our squad. So luckily that it all came together that day. Yeah,
one of those players probably Peter Whittingham. He scored an absolute screamer with his right foot in that game. It's kind of funny, that FA Cup run, because it's probably one of the most enjoyable ones that I've ever watched, just because the big teams tend to drop pretty quickly. Did you guys feel like you maybe became not the underdog? You guys were maybe the least favoured of the underdogs that were coming through. Barnsley, who you played in the semi-finals, had knocked out Chelsea and Liverpool, so they were getting loads of hype and everyone was enjoying to see where they went. You guys are playing them at Wembley. That's your first visit. 82,000 people inside that stadium. How was playing at Wembley?
It was amazing. That's probably one of the best game I've played in my career. My whole career, that's probably the best game, that semi-final. Whether it was the occasion or the stadium, just like how I was feeling. I was probably the most polished performance I've played in my career that game. So, but I know what you mean about Barnsley, because they must have been devastated, because they put out obviously Chelsea and Liverpool, and then they've got put out the semi by us. They must be thinking, come on, I mean, seriously. But we played well on the day, and it was amazing. Wembley was obviously revamped, and it was a stunning stadium, and it was a great day, great memory. And
Joe Ledley goal pushes through to the final, so he's coming back. Portsmouth in the final, and kind of the same situation I was talking about with Barnsley. Portsmouth at the time, David James, Sol Campbell, Nico Crankyard, Benjani, Diarra, Montari, Kanu, they had loads of players that people love to watch. They just finished 8th in the Premier League. What is FA Cup final week prep like?
It was great. You know, up to the final. You know, we made a song. Big Tomo obviously wrote a song with one of the boys from Cardiff, a songwriter in Cardiff. We done the cup final song. We done you know, you get measured for the suits. You know, it certainly wasn't Armani. I think it was Marks and Spencer's. I'm pretty sure at the time. It was a cracking suit, to be fair. I think I've still got it. But the build up was great. And again, we're going into that game as underdogs, no pressure, looking forward to it. Obviously wanting to make our mark and obviously wanting to go and win it. So it was really enjoyable time.
Had Dave Jones identified any weaknesses in that side? Because that Portsmouth side were quite gung-ho for a Premier League side. They were amazing to watch going forward. Had he identified any weaknesses, or was it just really relying on people winning their personal battles on the day?
Yeah, Dave Jones is not really that type of manager, to be honest. He was more like always set up exactly the same way. It was always 4-4-2, no matter who we played. It was just like, we play 4-4-2. This is how we play. He wasn't much... Like, Dave Jones' ability was to put together a really good squad of players and keep the harmony within the squad really good. And he was really good at that. He was fantastic at signing really good players and a good eye for a player. Terry Burton, who was his first team coach, was a fantastic coach, so it worked well between the two of them. So it would have been more like Terry Burton would have been talking about like weaknesses and stuff. But at Cardiff, we would always just try to play our own game. And you know, obviously we talked about it, but even now, like thinking back to that team, they had a phenomenal team that day. Like the players that they had in their squad, you forget how good a squad they had and the players they had. So again, a frustrating game because it wasn't much of a final. Lost 1-0, could have went either way, and frustration ends up, you know, but a fantastic occasion to play in.
Yeah, huge occasion for Cardiff. That is not where Cardiff were aiming to be. The aim was Premier League success. So the next season is going to be the last at Ninian Park. You had another season where you missed very few matches. An overall really good season. Never lost in the opening 9. Had a 3-month unbeaten run in that spell as well. The last derby in Ninian Park was 2-2 with Swansea, where I think there was a bit of crowd trouble with the referee being hit. How were the South Wales derbies compared to Old Firms and Dundee derbies?
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty feisty for sure. Is, you know, the journey between Swansea and Cardiff, I think there's so many bridges on the motorway, and like the police had to shut down these bridges because people were chucking stuff off the bridges, and so every time they played, they had to block all this stuff, and you get the police escort in and out. It was pretty feisty, to be fair. And obviously, I still think Old Firm is probably the biggest derby in the world, if not the biggest. So that's next level. The Dundee derbies were great, really good occasion for the city, for such a small city to have such rivalry as well. But the South Wales derby was a lot of hatred there as well, for sure.
So Cardiff were a very good side that season. They were always in and around the playoff for a playoff promotion all season. 42 games played out of the 46. All Cardiff need is one single point in the last 4 games, I believe. Preston on the 4th last game beat you 6-0, and they actually end up pipping you by a goal scored.
Yeah.
Did that ever get looked back on at the end of the season by the manager and kind of putting forward the importance of, in this championship, even if you lose games, you can't lose games by that significant a factor?
Yeah, I mean, that game against Preston was a disaster because they scored the 6. It's a 12-goal swing because obviously they've gained 6 on us and we've lost 6 more. So it was like, that absolutely killed us. We had boys who were like amazing football players scoring like the best own goals ever, diving heady own goals. It was just like anything that could go wrong that day went wrong. We were terrible on the day. And that did eventually kill us. And it was strange towards the end of the season. We had obviously the last game at Ninian. Roy Keane was now the manager at Ipswich. They beat us, I think it was 3-1 or 3-0. Ross McCormack had a chance to score a pen to put us ahead and he missed it. You know, everything that could have went wrong in that last 4 games went wrong. And it still rankles a bit how Preston got into the playoffs before us because, you know, we'd played the same amount of games, we'd won the same amount, we'd drawn the same amount, we'd lost the same amount. we had exactly the same goal difference, but they'd scored one more than us, but we'd let in one less than them, so they get to the playoffs. I'm just thinking, well, how's that work? What? We've got exactly the same goal difference, and I know it has to come down to someone, but I just found it always strange. And saying that, if they'd been head to head, they'd have went through in that as well because they pumped us 6-0. So yeah, it's annoying, very annoying.
Following season, moved to a new stadium. Everything in Cardiff is on the up. Finished 4th that season. You were getting in the playoffs. Then you had an issue with your ankle coming up to April. You'd played 9 games in 5 weeks. I know Dave Jones had said that it was just a case of your ankle had a niggle and you were just playing too many games. Is that the biggest problem with the Championship in England?
Yeah, it is. You just don't really get a chance to recover to the point you're always playing with a niggle. You're never 100% unless you get a rest, but you very rarely get a rest unless you come out injured and then you get back into it. But it's a really tough league, and especially like with how competitive it is, the teams you're playing. Everyone's a big unit. You're all strong boys down there, and it's grueling. We played away against Palace, and I think we won. But during the game, I went for a ball, and I felt a crack in my ankle, and I was just like, that didn't feel particularly well. But then I just carried on playing, and then came to training during the week, and I remember just doing a shooting exercise, and I felt it a little bit again. But again, it was nothing major. And then I went home that night. I actually had to call the Cardiff doctor to my house because my foot was agony. It was swollen up, and it was like really on fire, like hot. I was thinking, what's happening? I mean, I'd not even done anything, but what had happened, I'd actually snapped the peroneal tendon in my ankle. It'd obviously been hanging on, and I'd snapped it in the training. But I didn't feel it immediately, but then at night it was agony. So, yeah, unfortunately, I was out and I was in a boot for the playoff run, so it was disappointing.
A playoff run that actually saw Blackpool go up 3-2. Again, it's another interesting one where Cardiff have went to Wembley and they're playing against a team that everyone else was enjoying watching. And at 3-2 in the first half, it's probably the best first half of a game I think I've ever watched in a playoff final. Is that just absolute frustration? You've worked so hard to get Cardiff in a position where they're going to be in the playoffs, and you're watching your teammates that you can't help get promoted.
Yeah, you get that helpless feeling, and devastated for the club, for the coaching staff, for everyone involved, devastated for the players, the supporters, devastated for myself. I had another year contract, would have been up in the Premiership, not to say I'd have played or whether I'd have stayed, but I'd been able to say I got Cardiff to that point. So I was devastated. It was horrible. It was probably one of the lowest points in my career, and I know a lot of the boys, and we're still in touch now, say that was the lowest feeling they've had in their career. It was terrible. It was just like the worst of the worst. You worked so hard to try and get the club up, and just on the last day, and just came up short. But yeah, I remember the game. I remember it being boiling hot. I was sitting in the stand, and it was boiling. And then we went up twice. So we went up 1-0, and then we went up 2-1, and then you're down 3-2 by half time, and it was just like, wow, what's happening here? But we had Jay Bothroyd that came off pretty early with a calf injury. He'd been carrying a calf niggle as well, and he was a big player for us. So it was just again, things just didn't go well on the day. It was unfortunate.
You're rehabbing over that summer, get back in. You're 32, 33 years old at the time. You're in your last year of your deal. Do you know that Dave Jones spoke to you that he's bringing in Jason Kumas, Olafanyana from Wolves on loan? Did you know that you're maybe not going to get as much game time, or did you still expect to be a first team player?
Yeah, no, I mean, Dave Jones was pretty upfront. He was telling us there's players coming in and we're looking to freshen things up. Down in England, and down there, players move a lot more than what they do in Scotland. Like because there's so many clubs. Like you always see players moving to different clubs quite quickly. I had a chance to go on loan to Leeds, which I regret not going now. But it was difficult at the time because we had our twins were not long born, and my wife would have been there herself because it's too far to go to Leeds. We didn't want to relocate to Leeds, and buy a house or go there because it was only a year's loan deal.
Right. Okay.
So it was like, I don't know what to do. And then I said, you know what? I still feel I could fight for my place. Looking back now, we should have definitely went, but I just couldn't do it with family. It's a part of football that people don't really see, and I had to sort of think of my family more at that point than myself in my career, which, I'd have loved to have went to Leeds. It just wasn't the right timing.
Yeah, it's the human being side again, isn't it, that football fans want to forget exists. There's a load of moving parts when you have to make a decision on a move. That season ended in a semi-final defeat, which is unfortunate because I would have seen Cardiff play Swansea at Wembley to get a place in the Premier League. Decide you're moving on. How do you look back in your time at Cardiff?
I absolutely loved Cardiff. I think the first season, to be able, we talked about obviously not playing that many games at Rangers, to go from that to the first season in Cardiff, played 55 games. I think I started 50. So that was like a validation of the move, to get away and get that freshness. So it was good to get away, and I loved that. And then we were always there or thereabouts. We were always playing for stuff. It was always competitive. We had a great bunch of boys. My kids were born there. Just like it was a great move for me to look back on and really look back on it really fondly. Yeah,
and I do see on Twitter the Cardiff fans obviously took to you very well, so they enjoyed having you as well. You were still training with the side even as you went on to next season. Then you had to train with the youth team. Then former captain Barry Smith, when you were at Dundee before, he's the manager. Is he just asking for a favour? Is he kind of try to psychologically manipulate you and tell you that it would suit you to come back up and play football?
Yeah, a bit of both. A bit of both. So basically, it got to like October time. I was training with Cardiff because obviously I still had a good relationship there. Malky McKay came in, obviously being Scottish, met him and asked him kindly if he could continue training. To be honest, I was absolutely flying in training. I'm surprised he never signed me because I was on fire. But he'd obviously made his mind up to move on, which is fine. And then the squad became bigger and bigger, and you got more signings. And then training with the youth team. And I was always looking at other options, seeing what else was out there. I was close to going to Aberdeen at that point, but it fell through in the summer. I think they'd signed another couple of players and the budget was gone, so it came too late. And then looking around England, opportunities, my agent obviously speaking to clubs, but there was nothing really came up that was worth moving my family. My kids are in like preschool, like primary, kindergarten, whatever it is at that time. So nothing really jumping out. It got to October time, so this is like obviously from August, September, October. And then Baz said, listen, you're not playing, come back up, get your games and put yourself in the shop window and, you'll do me a favour and you'll do the club a favour. And it's actually one of the best things I've done. I was there for 12 games, scored 4 goals. I was on fire. And, from missing a lot of football to coming back into the team and getting the enjoyment again, it was great. I think we went on a great run. I think we were second bottom when I joined. Hence, Baz was trying to get us in. And but by the time I left, we were second in the league and we'd done well in the cup. So it turned out a perfect move for me.
And in January, I believe there was talk of signing an extension, or you signed an extension, but then Aberdeen, your hometown club, the team you've supported your whole life, come in for you. Is there any hesitation at all?
No, there wasn't. I mean, I'd sort of had a gentleman's agreement with Baz. My contract was signed to the end of the season, but said, listen, if anyone comes in and you want to move, then you have my blessing, you can move. So it was a gentleman's agreement with me and Baz. I'm still good mate. Baz is still one of my best mates. Every time I come back to UK, I'll go and meet him and his wife, and we catch up as a family. So had that agreement. The opportunity came in, my hometown club, and I says, listen, I'm going back up to the Premier League. I was like, yeah, I'm going. So there was no hesitation from me, no.
Reunited with the man who gave you your first Scotland cap. What's Craig Brown like as a manager?
I love Craig Brown. He's a legend. He's somebody that's, very respectful. You respect him. Unbelievably knowledgeable, and his memory is incredible. He remembers everything, players. Just thinking, how do you remember all that? I mean, I can't remember stuff last week, the last game. He remembers things years ago. It's quite amazing. But I've got total respect for Craig and what he done for me as well.
We came into a semi-struggling Aberdeen side who had made it all the way to the semi-final of the Scottish Cup, which you were cup-tied from because you'd played against Kilmarnock for Dundee.
Yep.
How was the Aberdeen side at that time, and because I think that losing that game kind of ended Craig Brown's tenure at Aberdeen. What happens when Derek McInnes comes in and wants a fresh start?
Well, I think Bruni would have had another year, no? I think he would have been there. I think Craig had another year after that, and then it would have been Derek after that. But yeah, there's certainly around the club and around the team, there was a bit of a, I'm trying to think what the right word is, apathy. Like really wanting to push on, but just not able to do it. But obviously a huge club that had massive expectations, and we just weren't getting there, and it was frustrating. We really wanted to push on, and we could just never do it. But in saying that, even with that, I still love my time there, because I was getting to play for the club that I supported as a boy, and work with Craig and Archie I enjoyed. So it was, for me, it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I do feel like at that time, when I look back at that Aberdeen side, Jamie Langfield, Russell Anderson, Johnny Hayes, yourself, Stephen Hughes, Ryan Fraser, who's now at Bournemouth, and Niall McGinn as well. So there's players that have went on and had really good careers. So I do feel like they were a squad that had underachieved at the time. Does Derek McInnes just tell you it's a fresh start, younger faces, and you need to find a new club?
Yeah, basically as cut and dried as that. I'd obviously known Dale throughout my career. He was obviously a little bit older than me, but we came across each other, would have played against each other. Seen him around the traps. I knew Doc, his assistant, pretty well as well. So, when they came into the club, pretty quickly he sort of told everyone that was going to be staying, that he wanted them to stay, and the ones that was going to leave, you're going to have to move on and find new clubs. And I had no issue with that at all. I totally get where he was coming from. I still felt I could have done a job for him, for sure. It was at that point in my career that I could have lent some experience to the team, I felt, and I always backed myself, but totally get where he was coming from, where he was totally freshening up, and had no issues with that at all. And, I've seen Dale loads of times since, and, no hard feelings at all. Yeah.
Dundee again. John Brown, who I'm assuming you had met through at Rangers at some point, has asked you to come back to Dundee for a third spell, 2-year deal. Told you he was going to be captain. Is it just that desire of, you talked before, that you maybe really don't feel you're part of that first division winning side, that you want to go back and lift the title?
There was a few things. So certainly John being there, obviously a good relationship with John when I was at Rangers, and highly respected him. The fact that it was Dundee and they wanted me, to go back as club captain was definitely a big part of me making that decision to go back. And also I was going to get to coach the reserve team. So there was a few things there. So it was like, it was all sort of working out fine. I could still travel, obviously live in Aberdeen. So myself and Martin Boyle travelled down for the year. So it all sort of, I didn't have to move. So it was just like, you know what, we knew we were going to emigrate to Australia, so it was like one more year. And my wife was kind enough just to say, all right, no worries. We know we're going to do it. So, it turned out to be the best decision I made, yeah. And
Paul Hartley comes in, you secure promotion. You do have the option for a second year getting onto the SPL. Is it just a decision made by yourself? You said your wife wanted to go back to Australia because that's where she's from. Is it just going out in a high instead of slugging it out as a relegation battle?
Definitely. It was more like, I had that extra year in my contract because we got promoted, but it was more the fact, club captain, win the league on the last day in dramatic fashion. I could go, I've always felt in my head like I could go back to the Premier League and I'd probably enjoy it, but then I might not enjoy it. I've got nothing to prove in the Premier League. I'd played over 200 games in the Premier League, so let the younger lads play that. And plus, I could go do that and I might get injured and I might not enjoy the last year. My last year at Dundee, I played every game nearly, been fit, enjoyed it, loved it, went out in a high, picking up the trophy. So it's actually there's not an actual better way for me to finish in the situation that I'm in right now. And being able to take the decision myself to retire myself, it gives you a bit of closure in your career. And I know a lot of boys, I know loads of my mates who have been retired through injury, or just through bad form, or just, petering out, who have that frustration left. And I don't have that because I've been able to take the decision myself. So, yeah, it was just ready. It was just ready in my mind just to do it.
And in that third spell, you made your 300th appearance for Dundee, and in 2018, you were invited back to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. How does that feel as a player? I guess that's any player's kind of dream, is to be inducted into any club's Hall of Fame and be a legend forever.
No, it's an honour. It's definitely an honour, and it's something you definitely hold dear. I mean, I played for the club 3 times, with some really good times throughout that. They were good, a really good club for me throughout my career. Nothing but love for Dundee, and I hope, I've done enough in my time there that it's obviously likewise from the supporters and the club. I feel it is, and to top it off with, getting inducted to the Hall of Fame and coming back. I think sometimes with the Hall of Fame stuff, you don't realise, how important it is, because it's not until I went there that night and you've seen the other players that are getting inducted and the players that had been inducted, just thinking, wow, it's just amazing to be part of that, and it's I'm so proud of being able to get that.
As you said, it was always a plan to go to Australia. Was there ever a situation where you could have joined the A-League prior to going over to Australia?
It's something I always looked at. My wife's Aussie. That's the reason, it was always going to be coming to Australia. I'd been coming to Australia since 2002. So every time it was off season, we'd always come back and visit her family, and she'd been in the UK with me for 12 years. So we always knew it was going to be Australia, and I was always looking at the A-League and the players that were coming over. And obviously I knew Charlie and Bob had came over, and Robbie Fowler, who I played with at Cardiff as well, who came over. So always looking at it. Nothing really came of it. And because I didn't emigrate here until I was 36, there was no chance of me getting an opportunity to play A-League at 36, because they would prefer to give it to a younger Aussie, which I totally get. It was more about, I sort of realised my professional career was over at that point when I finished with Dundee.
When you moved, was it to start a new career outside of football, or was there always a plan to join a semi-pro team?
I was always I would always carry on football. I think I'll always carry on football no matter what level. I still play, even now I play myself over 35s park football, with a local team, which I absolutely love. It's been part of that team and still being able to play football. And I think I'll always play football. That was more, so Mark Robertson, who's my brother-in-law, was the head coach of Hakoah when I came over. And it was always a plan to sort of continue. So it was playing semi-pro. Outside of that, I didn't really have too much of an idea of what I was going to do. It was something I've always thought through my career, I need to be prepared. And then you get to the end of the career and you're just not prepared for anything. And it was just like, what do we do now? And transitioned into a technology recruitment role, which, you learn skills pretty quickly, and it's difficult because you're in an office, not used to that, and it was the first real job. So that was difficult. And saying that, I've enjoyed that side of working and starting up a new career and outside of football. And saying that, if I'd have been in the UK, and I'm pretty sure I'd have tried to go down the coaching route and try to remain in football full time for sure. In Australia, if that came up, then great. But there's a lot less opportunities here. So I sort of knew coming here that I was going to have to move away from trying to focus on full time football.
Are you doing your coaching badges, and is that where an aspiration, if an opportunity came up, you would take?
Yeah, I've had my UEFA A licence since 2013, so I've had that for about 7 years now. So I'd done that when I was in Scotland. So I'd done my B licence in Wales, so 2010, 2011 for my B licence. Done my A licence in Scotland, and I've also had to continue the continuous personal development over in Australia. Yeah. So I've seen the Welsh FA, I've seen the Scottish FA, and I've seen the Australian FFA, and the different approaches to coaching. I was coaching under 17s at Aberdeen a little bit. I've done the reserve team at Dundee, and I've been coaching out here semi-pro since, so an assistant level and at head coach level. So, and I love that. I love the coaching side as well, and it's something that I'd never say never, and I'd love to be involved in.
The structure in the Australian A-League seems to be continually changing. So this year Western United joined it. Next year I think it's MacArthur that are joining. Is there ever going to be any discussions, do you think, in the Australian League whereby the whole tier structure comes together? where promotion and relegation becomes a thing and it all becomes a more fluid setup?
I think it's going to be difficult because, I mean, something needs to change. They need to do it. I think they really need to do something. And I think there's a lot of talk about it just now because of what's going on. This is the ideal opportunity for them to have a fresh start, which would be amazing. How they do it logistically, difficult because of the size of the country. You know, it's really difficult. It's like, how do you do that? I mean, for instance, if a team from Sydney had to go and play Perth, you know, that's the logistics and the price of that. It's incredible, you know, to transfer a team over there. So how they do it, I think that's going to be and always will be the issue. But it certainly needs to change to sort of give the A-League a bit of a boost. And there's definitely talk about it just now. So hopefully they can do something that'll reinvigorate a lot of the fans here. Don't get me wrong, football in Australia is it's the most participated sport. The European leagues in Australia is massive because of such the ethnicities over here. You know, loads of people came from Europe. The EPL, the Premier League in Australia is, you know, huge. Like, so much people watch it and it's so well known. It's such a massive brand here. But it's transferring that into the local game as a challenge. And they're up against 3 other major sports that really hog the limelight. And you don't get much coverage in the press of football, which is total opposite to the UK.
It's quite interesting because of the BT Sport deal over here. Australian football is one of the ones we focus on our normal podcast on heavily, because if you wake up on a Saturday and Sunday morning and every game is on, you've got about 3 games back to back every Saturday and Sunday morning. So it's a pretty well watched league over here as it happens, just because of the time that it's on. So I want to weirdly now go back a wee bit in your career and talk about Scotland. Made your debut in 2001 against Poland, played the full 90 minutes. How long do you have to find out you're going to be called up? Were you in the original squad? Was there any moving around because it was a friendly?
I think it was in the original squad with that one. Yeah, no, I mean, there was a few squads over my time where I was maybe called in. In fact, there was a squad before that I didn't play, so I'd been called up as a replacement for a home game. I think it was against Iceland, possibly. I think it was Colin Henry's last game, and I'd been in that squad. But then I sort of got called up to that squad because of injury. But then for the Poland game, I was actually in the squad from the off. And it was a friendly. So I think he was trying a few different things. But yeah, no, I was 23 and I was absolutely buzzing to be involved with Scotland. It was amazing.
And then you got a call up to a competitive game against Latvia in October 2001. Is that when you start to feel like there is a chance of you actually holding down a place in Scotland's central midfield? It's a very aging squad at this point under Craig Brown. The 2002 campaign is going to be his last, and the players are aging. Is there a feeling that you can hold down this position?
I think when I went to the Scotland level, I've always, you know, found it, I wouldn't say like an inferiority complex, but certainly didn't feel as comfortable at that level as what I did at club level. Just because the players, you know, we had some fantastic players, and the level you're playing against is next level. It's the level above. So, you know, I would never thought I was going to be a regular. I knew I'd have to continue to fight and prove my worth, but just happy to be involved in Scotland and, you know, stuff. Look back on it and just absolutely buzzing and play for my country. Yeah.
You talked fondly about Craig Brown at your time at Aberdeen. Bertie Vogts comes in after Craig Brown for the 2004 European qualifiers. What was Bertie Vogts like when he called you up? Because Bertie Vogts, I think, in Scotland is someone who does not get anywhere near enough credit for the amount of players he had to go through to find out who was valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he maybe gets the credit he deserves. You know, there was a lot of players, and I think that's what he got tarnished with. It was more about he was trying out loads of different players to try and find the right blend. But he got the results. You know, towards the end, obviously, it didn't go particularly well, but he got the results. And with me, he was great. He was like, he actually gave me a lot of confidence. He was like, you know, like, he sort of likened me to a lot of the people in the German league, like in terms of how I was built and the way I sort of went about my game. And he says, you have confidence in yourself. You know, you can do so many things in this game. And he was great for me. I really enjoyed working with Bertie, and obviously Tommy Burns was there as well. And the trips away we had with them, I loved it.
In those qualifiers, you played against Germany twice. Did you see Bertie Vogts famously in that qualifier said that Germany were not the team they should have been. So the 2002 World Cup, they got to the final. But he had said in the build-up to those games that was a blip and that they were a nation that was about to fall really low down the pecking order. When you played against them, Jens Jeremies, Bernd Schneider, Michael Ballack in midfield, did you feel like they were in trouble?
No, definitely not. I can remember, obviously I've always been like, I'm not like really tall, but I've always had a pretty decent stature. And then coming up against Ballack in that game at Hampden, I think I came off the bench for the last little bit, and just thinking, like, this guy's a giant. Like, this guy's a unit, like a proper unit, and proper baller. Really good football player. So yeah, no, I definitely didn't feel like they were on the slide. It's certainly a challenge for us to sort of keep up with them.
Yeah, and then we got to the playoffs. We finished second behind Germany in that group. Drawn against Holland. We beat Holland 1-0 at Hampden, and then we go away to the Amsterdam Arena. Edgar Davids, Wesley Sneijder, Ruud van Nistelrooy. The team was phenomenal. You talked about an inferiority complex. Was that an eye-opener as to what football could do to you?
Yeah, no, definitely. It was. I think the worst problem that we had there was, I think we got them angry at Hampden by beating them, and I think they were just thinking, right, just you wait till Wednesday and we will see you back in Holland. And it was just like, yeah, wow. I can remember trying to chase Edgar Davids about that night unsuccessfully. He was phenomenal. I was just like, wow. And you can see obviously the level that these players are playing at in the top leagues in the world, and the team they had, like you say, Van der Vaart, Schneider, Van Nistelrooy, Davids. It's just like it just kept coming, and they absolutely destroyed us that night. Destroyed us.
The 2006 World Cup qualifying campaign wasn't the greatest, but at the end of that season, Walter Smith had taken over, and Scotland get invited to take part in the much maligned Kirin Cup over in Japan. You were in that squad. There was a whole host of new players in that squad. Yourself, Severin, Boyd, McFadden. I think Graham Murray had been called up to that squad as well. Scotland won that, and you played both games. Does that annoy you a little bit that is a maligned tournament? Because in Japan, it's a big deal. Does it annoy you that maybe it's not given the respect back here, that although it was only a 3-team competition, Scotland went and won something and you were part of that squad?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's people sort of forget about it and don't really talk about it, and I can understand that. I get it. It's not like a real tournament. It is a tournament, but it's not like a real tournament. But at the end of the day, we've got the photos, we've got a trophy, we're celebrating as a team. It's amazing. It's amazing to be part of, and I was just delighted to be there because I'd been out for the 2 years, and then I came back and I played the last 4 games for Rangers, and I played pretty well. I came back into the team and done really well, and then got the invite to come and play for Scotland. I'm like, 100%. I've missed loads of football. 1,000,000% I'm there. Let's do it. It's funny. My wife and I were coming back to Sydney anyway. And then what happened was so I basically said to Scotland, says, well, I'm going to Sydney anyway. Is there any way that I can go from Japan to Sydney? And if you go flying back, I'll just fly to Sydney. And they're like, yeah, it's fine. So that was it. Easy. Done. Let it go. I can remember the games. I had probably my best chance for Scotland. Darren Fletcher set me up, and I missed a target from the edge of the box. Not like an easy chance, but it was a decent chance that if it hit the target, it might have went in. So that's a bit devastating. But yeah, it was a great tournament. It was short, five days, loads of jet lag in between it. Managed to get a great result against Bulgaria, and then hold out against Japan and get the result. It was good. Great fun.
Yeah, I think you said your only regret was not actually being able to score that goal for Scotland. Do you have any Scotland regrets looking back in your career, or is it just happier that you had a career rather than maybe looking back at the time at Rangers where it could have went differently? Because in the Scotland, you were in the squad most of 2003, and you were probably going to be a centre midfielder. Is there any regrets, or is it just a good career?
Oh, there's always regrets. There's always stuff you wish you could have done better. For sure, Rangers is a massive regret. I feel like it's a missed opportunity, and I didn't really get to enjoy it as much as what I would have liked to. Of course, I obviously knew Rangers was a big club. I didn't realise just how big a club it was until I went there. It's a massive global club, and I didn't get to enjoy as much success there as what I would have liked in playing at Ibrox every week and just getting to enjoy it and be that football player within the squad that was playing every week. So that's a bit of regret. Regret I didn't get to win more trophies. Regret to not playing the Premiership down in England for a few years. I reckon I could have easily played in the Premiership. Not easily, sorry, but I'd have been able to hold my own. I've been able to be part of a squad that could have played at that level for a few years of my career anyway. Not scoring for Scotland, but yeah. Listen, overall, totally delighted and satisfied with how my career went, and to be able to sustain a career for 20 years, because it's not easy, and there's lots of players that don't get to do that and get the luck I had to be able to do that. So yeah, overall, certainly very satisfied.
Gavin, again, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate anyone that comes on and gives us their time in an interview. It's been fascinating talking to you, and I can't wait to put the interview out.
Nah, mate, anytime. I'll speak about football all day, every day. It's obviously still a passion, and it's a pleasure to speak to you.
I'll speak to you soon.